Although the Miami Heat are currently the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, there have been a lot of people that are really skeptical of this Heat roster, whether they believe that the recent four-game losing streak, like a couple weeks ago, just really hurt them. They're sometimes just struggling on offense, and there's just multiple factors that some people, don't really like the Heat's chances of going all the way. And I'm just going to answer the question, should we believe in the Heat? I'll be breaking down their offense, defense, players, and how they match up against other teams. So before we start, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, as it further motivates me to make more videos like this. So let's get right into it. So the Heat are currently 10th in offense and 4th in defense, and they were a lot higher in offense like a couple months ago, but they've really struggled on offense in the last month, whether it's Tyler Hero being out, and they have faced a lot of injuries this year. You had Jimmy, Bam, Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero all miss an extended amount of time, and it's still super impressive how good they've been, even with all those injuries. They've had players like Max Truss, Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, and Omar77 to all step up, which is so good to see for this Heat culture. They're known for developing young guys. Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, and now these players like Duncan Robinson, Gabe Vincent, Struss, which is super impressive to see how this Heat culture can come together. But over on their offense, they still rely a little bit too much on Tyler Hero. Jimmy Butler, I'll talk about him more later. Jimmy can sometimes be on and off. Of course, his three-pointer isn't really there, but we know Jimmy in the mid-range can get you a bucket, a good passer. Hero, a really good scorer. He's currently averaging 21, 5, and 4, and is probably their front runner for the sixth man of the year. And I still think that Tyler Hero is one of the biggest X Factors. If you saw my previous video, I had Tyler Hero on that X Factors list because he can just shift everything for this team. He can either drop 30 points, lead them to a win, or shoot them out of games at times. We saw in the bubble where they were so dominant because Tyler Hero was stepping up, hitting his shots against the Celtics and even the Lakers. But then last year against the Bucks, he was pretty much like averaging like 10 minutes a game, and he was just struggling so much. And because of that, they got swept by the Bucks. Of course, there were other factors, but Tyler Hero was a main part of that. And their offense, I still think that they could have another go-to guy, but still, their defense is so incredible. Just look at their team on paper. Kyle Lowry, above average defender. Jimmy, lockdown defender. Bam, perhaps the best defender in the entire NBA. Scrappy players like PJ Tucker, like Markieff Morris, Dwayne Dedman, Omar77. All solid defenders or above average defenders that just make up this Heat culture where they're going to work the hardest they can and just will them to games through their work ethic and so many different factors. And I think that their defense can really help them. They're currently 51-20, and even with, like I said, the injuries to all their stars, to pretty much all of the players in the rotation, they've still found so much success. There are a couple games over the first seed, and they probably will lock as the first seed. Now, we'll talk more about the matchups later, but it's really interesting to see how this team goes because they don't. I mean, let's talk about Jimmy Butler right now. I mean, do people see him as a superstar? I wouldn't have him as a superstar, and there's just been so many questions about Jimmy. Is Jimmy overrated? Is he not really the player we expect from him now? And it's just this playoffs is going to prove everything. He's currently averaging 21, 6, and 5 on 48% from the field, but this playoffs really gonna matter because if you look at the bubble, he was so impressive. Probably one of the best players in the entire bubble, and that really shot him up rankings. But then last season, against the Bucks, he really struggled with Brent Forbes scoring more points than him in the series, which is unacceptable for a superstar player that we know Jimmy can be. And this year is really gonna show, can he step up, be that first option on both ends that can lead this team against some teams like the Nets, 76ers, who all have superstars. And I'm really interested to see how he does, because I know Jimmy, yes, his three-point shot has somehow disappeared. He was such a good three-point shooter before, and now he's just awful. It's crazy, but I still think that Jimmy has it in him to take over a game through mid-range shots, through just his pure leadership. I still believe that Jimmy can be one of the best players on your team. Now, maybe you don't want him as the best. Maybe you want him as like the 1A or even the second option, but I still believe in Jimmy. And then we have Tyler Hero and Bam. I talked about Tyler already. 6th man of the year, probably gonna give you buckets. But Bam is really interesting because we know how good on defense he is. He's a versatile defender who can guard the paint, guard the perimeter against guards, and give up and just keep his hold for pretty much the whole game, where he can block shots, he can guard other guards, which is super impressive with his quickness and just being able overall athleticism. And yes, his offense is a little bit raw. You still want him maybe expanding his game to the 3-point line, maybe, but like he's still averaging 19, 10. I would like to see him like get more passes because we know that Bam can be a good passer. He's only averaging 3 assists, but he was averaging 5 assists for like the last 2 years. But I still really believe in Bam. His defense is going to be there, and his offense, if he can polish it up with just being that paint presence and maybe expanding his game. His mid-range is already really good, but if he can expand that out to the 3-point line, I mean, he hasn't even attempted a 3-point. He's attempted 0.1 3-pointers a game and hasn't made a single 3 this entire season. And if he can expand out his game, that can do so much for his game, and I would love to see that. And then there's just other players. You got Kyle Lowry, their big offseason acquisition. He's been so good as a leader. He's averaging around 13, 7, and 4. And yes, he isn't that same Toronto Raptors statistically. The impact is still there. The leadership is still there. And overall, the winning will always be there for Kyle Lowry. And he's still a really good son. Then you got someone like Duncan Robinson. And yes, he's, I would say, overpaid. He's still a really good shooter. And he's having an off year, but he can also change a whole playoff series with his jump shot. Will he be on that microwave, or will he just make a house from all of his bricks? Then you have people like Max Struss, Caleb Martin, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and just overall those players who, yes, they're young, they haven't proven much, but we know they can ball. And then perhaps the biggest question mark is Victor Oladipo. I don't know what to think of VO because, like, he was so good 2 years ago. All NBA player, all defensive player, most improved, pushing LeBron to Game 7. But injury after injury after injury has really derailed his career, from going to the Pacers, going to the Rockets, going to the Heat, immediately getting injured, being out for pretty much this whole season except for 7 games, where he's only averaging around 8 points. Just isn't looking like himself, and I still think that Victor has it. His work ethic is amazing, and I still really want to see Victor succeed, but he hasn't really shown it at all, especially with those injuries keep on piling and piling. But he's definitely also just another player who can swing. So, how do the Heat match up against other teams? Well, first the Bucks. I mean, they got swept last year, but they beat them the year before. Bam is a good defender for Giannis, and I think that I would personally take the Bucks. Maybe it'll be like 6 games, maybe even 7 games. It's gonna be a hard fought-out series, but I would still take the Bucks pretty much because of the offensive struggles they have. If you lock up Hero, if you lock up Jimmy, if you keep Bam contained, then there's not really too many options that the offense can do. Then it's players like Duncan Robinson, Max Struss, Victor Oladipo who could step up, that can change the whole thing. Then you have like the Nets, and they might face the Nets in the first round, which is so scary to just think about for this team. But I don't know. I mean, who's gonna guard Kevin Durant? I guess Jimmy or Bam? I don't know. Who's gonna guard Kyrie? Maybe Kyle Lowry? I don't know. But like, still, they don't have that just superstar go-to scorer. Their highest point per game scorer is Jimmy Butler at 21, which is still really good, but you don't have that 25 point per game scorer who you can count on during the crunch time. Tyler Hero, Jimmy, all amazing players, but they're really limited by that. Then you have teams like the Celtics and the Sixers, who that would be such an amazing series, especially with their hard-fought defense, and they match up pretty well against the Sixers, which would be an awesome series to see. But the East is just so many options. You have just so many teams that have a shot. There's, I would say, like the Heat, the Bucks, the Nets. I mean, I guess not really the Celtics anymore. The 76ers. That's already 5 teams, or 4 if you don't include the Celtics, that have a chance of getting out of the East. And the Heat, I wouldn't call them the favorites, but they definitely have a chance. So, should you believe in the Heat? I would personally still believe. I still believe in them. Now, it's gonna be a close series between the Nets, Bucks, Celtics, 76ers if they face them in. I would love to see that series and see how they match up, see how these teams can just prove themselves, especially people like Jimmy, Hero, Bam, Duncan. And I think that if they have a chance to go all the way, they have a chance to make it to the finals. But if they can put it all together, their big three still hasn't really played too many games together, and if they can put it all together, amazing. This team is super scary, but there's still so many question marks with this team, and I still believe Heat culture amazing. Their chemistry will always be there, and I'm really interested to see how they perform in the playoffs. So that being said, that's gonna be my thoughts about the Heat. Comment down below your thoughts. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time.